podcast is powered by PKF. PKF, your trusted advisor in the Hunter for over 45 years. Down to Business acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Down to Business. I'm your host Andrew Beattie, and today joining me to talk all things ESG. Now we'll get to what ESG is, but Dan and Jackie Spiteri, yes, same last name, husband and wife, working together, so we'll get right into that. We'll talk about how an ex-rugby league player and his lovely wife met in the Caribbean, now the daughter to Florabella, and in business together, all things ESG. But I've given a quick intro. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, mate.
Why don't you give me a bit more of a background of how we got to this stage? We'll get right into the business stuff, but I always like to get a bit of a understanding, where people met and... well, usually it's not where people met because I'm not talking husband and wife, but how we got to this stage where we're in business together now. So what's the background?
The start is in like where we met or
even upbringing, yeah.
Upbringing. Well, I'm Welsh, so I'm not from Australia. I was born and bred in the mountains in South Wales.
Right.
And then headed over to the Caribbean doing my masters over there and bumped into this one who was...
Found me.
Something along the lines of that.
Yeah, so I was a marine engineer on a big mega yachts over in the Caribbean for 3 years, and we just pulled into this one island where my sister was. I hadn't seen it for 2 years. I asked the captain, can we pull in for 5 minutes? Pulled in and met Jackie at a library or bar?
Oh, I think it was a library.
Yeah, library, yeah.
Definitely so.
And then Jackie ended up working on the boat with me for a year after that, and then she's done a masters and was cleaning boats, so she said no, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And we came back and started a family, and the rest is history.
So talk me, I'm interested in the growing up in Wales, like a very different upbringing to Australia.
Yeah, much colder, a little bit wetter, lots of mountains, so very rural upbringing in Wales. So yeah, it was good. I guess kind of connecting with the environment. That was kind of where I kind of first found my passion for environmental stuff. And I lived on a farming estate, so it was quite an affluent farming estate. We weren't, but we rented a house there, and the farmers used to go and shoot the ducks and the pheasants and things. And so in my very early days, I became quite an advocate with the RSPCA and was trying to save the ducks and pheasants. So I think that's probably where it all started for me.
You don't keep a shotgun?
No.
Well, once we finished on the boat and we said, what are we going to do? It was like that. We just said, okay, where do we want to work? Because I was a mechanic. Jackie had the background in environment, so we could run an island. We could do anything, and we ended up picking Newcastle for some reason.
Yeah.
So then Jackie, we just started the family then. So
Well, it is interesting that you ended up here. I mean, from a generally in Australia, from when corporates want to put new products out or people want to try new services, Newcastle is quite a common testing ground. So we'll get to how you ended up with ESG, but it's not a bad market that if you can make it here. Yeah. As the song goes, you can probably make it anywhere. So speaking of singing, I'm Welsh.
I didn't get the voice, so I won't share.
You've been through, I guess, to get to this point before you started your own business. Jackie, you worked in many roles in corporate.
Yeah. So I guess I started off when I first came to Australia. In fact, I started off in a yacht shop, kind of fixing sails, because anything else you needed to have a license. I wanted to go and work in a coffee shop. You had to have a barista license. You don't need that sort of stuff in the UK. And I had a master's, and then I eventually found some work with a consultancy, working in the mining sector, doing some environmental kind of management work out there. But then the job at the port popped up, and all of my studies has been very much focused on kind of maritime environmental conservation, coastal management, that sort of thing. And so when that job popped up, the opportunity to kind of come back to the coastline was there, and I completely stuffed up the interview the first time, so they invited me back for a cup of tea and a bit more of a relaxed environment, and then kind of got the role and spent 11 years there. Started off in the kind of environmental kind of officer space, and then slowly kind of progressed through, took on sustainability, took on planning, and then moved into the finance space and worked in the ESG investor relations role. So 11 years though was, I was always like the square peg in the round hole. And so I managed to get moved around multiple divisions. But I guess from a personal growth perspective, that was actually really good exposure to be able to understand how different divisions within a business function, to be able to then, apply ESG holistically across an organisation.
A really good point for viewers and listeners too, that so many people put all their eggs in one basket. They've got this beautiful dream to go into business, but haven't done really any of that, research, experience, if you like. You've moved into many different positions, or they stay within their lane so much they don't get the finance exposure, or they don't get the, how does cash flow work, etc. So really good point to make sure if you're going to make that leap, play the probability card and actually get some exposure in different areas. So then, and Dan, you've been probably more along that entrepreneurial path. Was that part of the reason, I guess, that this has come about together now, that combining business strengths and the real skill set in the ESG space?
Yeah, 100%. Did you got interviewed twice for a job? I don't think I've ever heard of that. The double up on the interview, but no, so I started as a fitter as a 15-year-old. So, and did a trade for 10 years and then, worked on trucks, then went overseas and worked on the mega yachts. And then it wasn't until later, like I was 30, that I started even understanding how businesses work, or understanding that you can run business, or understanding businesses at all. And then I went down a, let's say, 7-year path of entrepreneur. They're failures. I say things didn't work, but all of that kind of failure now I use in this business now, because I learned all of those things the hard way whilst I was still working. So it was one of those on the side entrepreneur kind of dreams. And then when Jackie went out on her own, she obviously was the SME and was going full steam ahead, and I could just see the gap that we needed to fill the other side of it. The how we scale, how do we plan it, how do we put processes in place, and I'm quite organised, shall we say? So, and it's complete opposites, as in I'm organised, Jackie's a creative person. She's the SME in ESG, and I'm all business. So it really, we don't step on each other's toes. We have our own office, and we kind of, wouldn't say we don't fight, but we get through things and work things out very easily.
It's funny how many times, I can only go my own relationship that, I don't even think my wife would say I've got a creative bone in my body, but the funny thing, I'll tell a little story. My son's music teacher, guitar teacher, I said I might have a couple of lessons with him. She's going, this will be a train wreck. And while she was listening, he said, geez, you've got rhythm. And I use that until the cows come home. Like I said. So it's a really good point about your raise around making sure you understand your strengths and weaknesses too, I think the key thing is we don't have to do everything, and not everyone has to be good at everything. Yeah. Too many business owners make the mistake of, if you're trying to replicate or scale, everyone needs to be good at everything. And then the reality is that's not how you create a great result. Might as well be a sole trader or a one-man band. And the reality is we need to play to strengths, and how does that come together to create the objective or the strategic outcome. So it's a good point. So I guess then the other thing I want to touch on, and it comes up a lot in a lot of these talks we do, and I mentioned before you at Rugby League, you had a stint in the Knights program or club. A lot of previous guests have been, involved in the Knights as well. But I think in a town in Newcastle, what that created, I'm going to guess here, is the networks and what that now leverages into business opportunities.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that was more teamwork and culture that I pulled from that. With the Knights, it was, I played football since I was 9 years old, so it was very much part of my DNA. So when I come into businesses, it's very prominent and very what do we call it? Like, that's one of my strengths, is to bring people together and work as a team. Because if you just got one outlier, one good player, let's say, it doesn't work. So yeah, that's what I drew on there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So let's now talk about the business. Sustainable ESG. So, reality is we hear this term ESG come up so much. I mean, geez, we're business advisory and accounting, etc. And I don't think there's too many business advisors that understand it. And I think, Jackie, you referred to your career and the different exposure and, square peg, round hole, all these sort of things. Over that period of time, you would have seen the understanding and the awareness around ESG change as well. So before we go down that path, let's talk, what is ESG, like at its core?
So ESG stands for Environmental, Social, Governance. It's emerged from the financial sector. It's related to kind of sustainability, but it's really used as a tool for investors to understand investment risk associated with an entity on something other than finance risk. So that gives them an opportunity to have a structured way of understanding any sort of environmental risk exposure and opportunity, social risk and exposure and opportunity, and then how is that organisation governed and managed. So that's effectively where it's come from and what it is.
And if you think, probably even a bit till to this day, you probably tell me, but if you think way back when, I imagine it would have been, call it a must-have as opposed to a want-to-have. Like there'd be a lot of companies ticking a box. How have you seen that change and awareness around that?
Yeah, I think it's evolved, and I think, sustainability, ESG has been around since biblical times when people are kind of making decisions based on values and ethical kind of positions. I think within business, a lot of organisations are really robust in a compliance space and have been asked to do ESG and have had to kind of comply with that. But now I think we're seeing a lot more people kind of making decisions based on values, and there's a lot more kind of narrative out there around the effects of climate change, impacts on biodiversity, those social movements. And I think a lot of that next generation that are coming through are making decisions based on how organisations are responding to that. So I think there's a real risk for organisations, even if you are, don't have to tick those compliance boxes. If you want to have employees want to work for you and retain those employees, you need to be doing something in this space.
Well, that's a great point, because I think, too many business owners would be just looking more from the, I guess, customer-supplier / relationship, but that's a great one on employees, and especially in a market that's so hard to get, labour full stop, let alone quality. So we might come back to that point. I guess if we talk, we referred to, big business have had to do it for a long time. How have you seen it start to evolve into, SMEs, which a lot of the viewers of this would be?
Yeah, so it was really interesting actually. So as those larger organisations are kind of integrating ESG practice, sustainability practice into their organisations, they're looking at procurement and looking at sustainable procurement, and so looking then at their supply chains, and that has a direct effect on those SMEs who are wanting to work for those larger organisations, because now they're going to have to uplift their game to align with that corporation's requirements and standards as it relates to ESG. And so quite a lot of our clients actually have come through and are like, well, how do we pitch, how do we position ourselves in this ESG space? And so we've been supporting people in being able to kind of define what ESG means to them, because it is bespoke for each organisation, and then how that can help them support their kind of tender submissions and things like that. So it really is having that kind of trickle down effect, which is fantastic.
So how then you play the part, Dan, from as you said, Jackie does a lot more of the, I guess the technical is the best way to describe it. A lot of marketing this stuff, especially to the uneducated, it'd be pretty difficult. What's some of the things you need to get into there?
Well, the best part is, because I'm one of the people trying to learn about it, so I hear that information, then I can regurgitate it in a way that people at my level understand it. Because if Jackie talks about it and people don't know, they're just like, what are you talking about? So I just try and use that in marketing and sales, but then you get people that are mature in their ESG journey, and that's Jackie has to come back in and kind of speak to them. But yeah, where I'm at is basically forecasting, marketing, sales, doing all the like the employees, a lot of admin on the finance, invoicing, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, just taking that load off Jackie so she can focus on our clients. Yeah.
So let's come back on that point around, I guess, that people aspect. You know, I guess that sparks something in me because it's one that probably gets overlooked. You know, what are some of the things you're seeing with, real case studies, I guess, from employees challenging employers now in that space?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think that next generation really care about what the future looks like. I mean, you've got Greta Thunberg, who's kind of quite an out there activist, but you're seeing that in the employee space. And when people are applying for jobs, they're asking, what are you as an organisation doing in this space to kind of align with my values? And so it is really real, and organisations are having to think and ensure that they can demonstrate how they're responding to ESG and sustainability.
Yeah, right. No, look, and you just reminded me, we had an interview 2 months ago. Fortunately, she joined the team, so that was must have had the right answer. But it was asked, not so much the full ESG, but what's our contribution to community and how can you show that? And it was like, well, it's a good question. You know, I often try and rattle the interviewee, I guess, with questions that I'm not expecting, and I was there going, yeah, right, I have to think about it, you know. But so it's a really good point, and I think for business owners, that's part of what you may need to have, not just a response to, but an actual strategic direction around.
Yeah, and I think it has to be aligned with your organisation. So, you know, thinking about, you know, what are the impacts or the facets of my organisation, and then what are the environmental and social things that I should be doing in order to respond to those impacts. So, yeah, making sure it's aligned is important.
So, and I'll throw this to either of you. We've spoken a lot about just the people aspect and attracting talent or retaining talent, but also then about alignment to potential customers and how you can fit into their ESG requirements, etc. So there's obviously a direct benefit there. When we get down to numbers, but, you know, we like numbers. You know, most business owners like numbers. What's the business case around this stuff? I imagine you have to have these conversations all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess, I don't know.
No,
I jumped in. Get excited. I think, you know, so I guess reduced numbers in terms of employee turnover, so the costs associated with that. But also, if you're adopting kind of efficiency within your organisation through replacing your light bulbs, your LED light bulbs, for example, you're actually reducing your energy costs. So you're having an environmental benefit in that you're reducing the emissions associated with the electricity used for those light bulbs, but you're actually saving dollars with the cost of that electricity. I think we've done a couple of electric vehicle fleet transitions, and so transitioning your diesel, petrol, mechanical cars across to EVs, and there's savings associated with that as well in terms of reduced fuel costs, reduced maintenance because you're dealing with an electric battery engine versus a mechanical engine, and they can be quite significant, and then obviously the environmental benefits associated with them. So there are efficiencies, and then I guess access to capital. You know,
Access to capital is a big one.
Yeah, it's a huge one. Yeah, so I guess organisations that are now having to kind of satisfy that sentiment of those lenders and those investors, if they can put forward a strong ESG position, then it opens up other pools of capital that might not otherwise been available previously.
Yeah. And there are, and not just I guess alternate lenders, even the mainstream lenders have, you know, ESG friendly products these days.
Yeah, and some of them, I mean, in some cases, it's becoming a have to have in order to secure debt. So yeah.
And the other one, the last one you spoke about, the tenders. So if you're neck to neck and you have the ESG strategy and showing where you're going in the future, and you win that big contract over them, that's where your value comes in. So you're not seeing it in a product, you see it in a contract long term. That's another big part where people say, oh, what's the value if I spend this money? Well, that's the value.
Yeah,
so,
it's a good point. I mean, I do a hell of a lot of strategic planning with clients, and I guess this has been, especially in that SME space, it probably hasn't been a focus for a lot of. It's starting to come out a bit more now. People are having to take a view. So it's a very interesting a change that's occurring, you know, in those conversations. So give me some more stories before we get into your business itself. I wouldn't mind, you know, what are some of the, you know, things that have where you've made, maybe not necessarily that's the financial impact, but where there's been some good results, or even where there's been some doubting Thomases that have turned into advocates.
Yeah, I think anytime you start, there's always going to be some doubting Thomases, and I think, winning them over is the challenge, right? And a lot of it comes, I think people feel quite overwhelmed when you say, okay, now you have to put forward an ESG strategy. Well, how the heck do I do that? And I think in a lot of cases, organizations are already doing quite a lot in the ESG space. It's just over here, here, and here. And so it's about kind of bringing that together and kind of defining what is material to your organization and kind of looking forward. And then, starting off with low-hanging fruit, so you can kind of demonstrate the value. Like I said earlier, like an LED lighting upgrade is a pretty low-hanging fruit opportunity, but as soon as you can start demonstrating that value to those doubting Thomases, and that they're actually saving money, they're reducing emissions, and they're getting a really good narrative for their lenders or their shareholders or whatever, then you start to kind of gain that momentum, and you can build on those foundations and become more ambitious, I think is, yeah.
And when you're working with these businesses or even business owners, do you become, is the model that it's, get in, fix something, get out, or is it an ongoing advisor? Is it a combination of both? Like, how do people use these services?
Well, we're pretty committed to making long-term partnerships with our clients, because I think it's really important to kind of fully understand a business in order to integrate ESG effectively. It needs to be holistic and it needs to be tailored. And so, we like to build those long-term relationships. And I think there's various iterations of where people are at and their journey with ESG. And Dan mentioned it earlier. You've got some organisations that are quite mature and they may just need some ongoing support with reporting and that sort of thing. But then you've got those organisations that are just setting out, and then you've got to kind of start with the foundations and kind of working out what is material to that organisation so that you can develop the strategy around it. So I think that's long-term partnerships, and we can come in at any point and support those organisations.
So it's nearly been part of their management team / advisory board type stuff, because this thing's going to change constantly, isn't it?
Yeah. So I have a couple of clients where I now sit on their ESG board subcommittees to help them continue to integrate within their organisation. So it's great.
No, it's good stuff. Shifting to your business. Well, I mean, we've been talking about your business, but now more probably in running the business as opposed to the delivery. I mean, what was the jump like going from the safety of a paycheck every week to geez, we've got this great idea and we're going to be like everyone else and jump into business?
It was quite daunting. So I think I took the first leap. Well, you obviously have done other businesses, but I took the first leap for sustainable ESG. So I spent 11 years working in infrastructure and felt like the need to change and needed a new challenge, but there was nothing out there that really kind of, enticed me to go for it. And Dan was like, well, you should start your own business. I was pushed off the cliff, or out the door off the cliff.
I don't want to start a business that you're starting it. I'll come and see you when you
can afford me.
Yeah. Basically.
But it's a whole new challenge. So I kind of embrace a challenge. I like to be tested and pushed, and this really has done that. So not only is it kind of starting, I guess, working in the area that you know so well, which is, sustainability, ESG, environmental management, but is learning all the other things that come with running a business, which I had no idea, well, possibly had some idea about, but not as much of an idea as I thought I would need to have. So, it was challenging, overwhelming, but exciting at the same time. So
because I mean, one of the obvious and biggest issues you need to face is I've got to get business. Business development. I think a lot of people, in my experience, think I do a good job and that just gets me more work, and that's not.
And you wait for the phone
that's
to ring,
right.
it doesn't happen like
so,
that.
And then other people really get themselves into a state of anxiety on the fact they have to do business development. So how's those sort of things been for you?
So Jackie's, it's a I call it a call for marketing and sales. So Jackie sits in the warm outreach, so all of her level is at the CEO, director level. So she's talking to the people that are going to, that can pay the check, make the decision, do all that kind of stuff. So the business has been on the back of that, but obviously the warm outreach stops at some stage. So I've come in and I'm doing the cold outreach, which is email marketing campaigns, scraping emails, doing all that, getting abused by people. That's quite fun. But so I've taken on the cold outreach, and I love marketing and sales. Like I feel like is the area where I'm just like drawn to, and it doesn't bother me to get rejected. And I just love the chase to try and get more work.
Well, I guess it's every time that you don't get a response, it's okay, what can we do differently? Like too many people take that as, as you said, judgment or rejection or whatever it may be, rather than, well, it's a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Got all my scripts there, so just keep repeating all those. Now we're moving into Facebook ads, and Jackie's doing a couple of videos with them, and then we'll run those campaigns and see how they go. And then the last one is just try and get more consistent with social media value posts like you guys do. Always create value rather than telling people what we do. Try and just give out. Yeah. You don't need to know about our services. You need to kind of just give out information.
Well, and it's funny, again, a lot of people I've consulted before or coach or even just general clients, they get very, even internally, get very caught up in, but it's our IP, we can't give it away. And I go, give it away. Most people are like, you're not going, they could Google and they could get IP, but half the time they're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. What are you going to do with it? So it's an interesting one because that whole, as you said, I like your analogy of warm versus cold. And obviously the warmer the lead, the better, with more success rate. But, I see a lot of people when they don't understand the funnel. For instance, how many people do we need to be reaching out to a week? How many new contacts do we need? How many business, opportunities do we need? Because we know our conversion rate's not going to be 100%. And that's I guess you're doing a fair bit of that with what you're talking about with your
and not
approaches.
just that, it's the cycle. So I email you, you're not ready, and then 6 months time, someone tells you to where's your ESG strategy? You're like, oh crap, you need to be kind of in tune with that to go back again, because a lot of people think once you rejected once that they're never going to use it, but ESG's early, so you kind of have to do a bit of a loop, come back around.
And it's also, as you said, it's not that they don't want to do something. Like I've told stories before. I've had clients that from my banking days that I've maintained contact with. It's taken 9 years to come across, and you go, well, it's a long dating period. It's just a matter of a contact plan and that sort of thing. So what else have you found being a challenge in running a business?
Cash flow.
Yeah.
We because the jobs are so long, we had a heap of money saved up to invest, and we're all excited about that. And then, you've got a 6-month job, and then they give you a 60-day waiting period, or whatever it is, and then they're delayed another month, and there's all this time before the actual cash comes in, and then you've got to pay the employees, pay the rent, pay all that kind of stuff in between. So cash flows, everyone knows it's a big issue, but one of those situations where we're going to change the way we invoice now and try and get money in a 3-stage process. So learn from not getting the cash flow to trying to get it later on. So that was a learning there. Yeah.
I think the other thing for me, which is probably part of that transition from being the SME and doing it, I've always done things myself. I've never really kind of had a team to work with. I've always kind of been very independent, and so I'm very used to managing everything myself and just getting it done. But I think kind of delegating and I'm not process orientated, as we discussed earlier. I'm more kind of organic, creative, and so then being able, and so I will work as I work, and I don't necessarily have a defined process, and so then being able to kind of get everything out of my head into a process in order to kind of pass on to our employees for them to be able to kind of do the work and I can review the work is a bit of a challenge, I think, and a transition, and something that I'm getting better at, but something that I've had to learn about quite significantly, and that's been a challenge for me.
And I guess, and you're not going to answer this, Dan, but is there an element of no one can do it as good as me?
I don't think no one can do it as good as me, and
deep down she has ego, right?
It's intended.
Comes out of it, not always true.
But I asked that because
I have standards.
I asked that because that's the hardest thing for most people going into the. If you want to get a leverage business. You absolutely have to say, look, what are we trying to get as an outcome? There are some rules around it, but it's not going to be the way I do it, and maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So and it's that diversity, right? Like if like, so I have my way, but I have to be open to other people having better ways as well, and you don't see that unless you share and you involve and you give people autonomy. So I think it's a challenge, but it's a rewarding challenge, and I'm learning, and I'm still in the process of learning, and I will probably continue to do so. Yeah.
Operator, the owner. It's a big step.
Oh, it's a massive one. And I mean, I think the other thing with that is, a lot of people have lofty goals, but you need to be realistic around what you're prepared to, let others do, or what systems or what investment you're prepared to make. And I was having a conversation today with a business owner, and they're going, "Oh, we have to triple," and I'm going, "Why?" Because to triple, it's a very different, set of rules you need to play by, and more people you need to get on, more delegation, for instance. Are you prepared to do that? So I think it's understanding what you really want out of it, and then having the business to support that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true. That's good.
And I think it needs to be sustainable growth for us. So yeah, take it easy.
So where do you see? Back to ESG. Where do you see ESG continuing to evolve in I guess the Australian or even more local market, and where the opportunity is?
You can talk about the latest.
Yeah, I think it is continuing to evolve. I think it's starting to trickle down. So you've got those large corporates which have that kind of investor-driven kind of momentum, but then that's kind of trickling down into those SMEs as we discussed earlier. Australia has just adopted the International Financial Sustainability Board new standards. There's two standards, but Australia is very much focused on the climate disclosures, and so that's climate-related financial disclosures, and that's going to become legislated. So I think we're going to see a lot more organisations having to, I guess, respond to those climate-related financial disclosure obligations as they come in. So I think that's kind of the next space. But also we had the task force for financial related climate disclosures kind of in front of that, and that's I guess pretty well understood by a lot of organisations, or the organisations that have to respond to that. And we're now seeing the task force for nature related financial disclosures coming in as they're kind of starting to kind of look at biodiversity. So I think that's kind of going to be an emerging space, and Australia is going to be impacted by that as well.
And I think if you just look even at a very macro level, just from watching politicians or things online, it's a constant rhetoric, I guess, around environment, or emissions being reduced, or carbon credits when they may come in, etc., etc. It's just something that, whether you need to do anything right now as in practical application, you definitely need to have a view on how it affects you.
Yeah, and I think you can't do that unless you measure what's going on for you. And so, like, there's a saying from way back, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think that's incredibly important in this space. And I think the other thing that's super important is, a lot of people think about sustainability and immediately tie it to environment, and that's kind of been the rhetoric for a long time. But I think really thinking about the social aspects as well are equally as important. We all work within communities, we all have employees, we all have stakeholders. What are our effects on those people, and how can we make it better?
We just got back from Rockhampton doing that.
Yeah. So
social
license to operate is pretty integral for a lot of organisations, and so helping organisations think about how they can meaningfully engage with the communities that they're
rather than just putting the wind farm up or solar farm. They're actually engaging with the community first, rather than just kind of ripping in and putting it up. So yeah, that's the social side as well. Yeah,
and I mean, just to reiterate, I think for any organisation, big or small, realistically, we're saying there's an avenue here to be looked at. So I mean, I think that's an important one for people to get their head around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're tiny, but we still do what we need to do in order to respond to that. Yeah. And goes back to that environment, the employee kind of attraction and retention piece as well. You're always going to need employees, no matter how big or small you are. So
absolutely.
What can you do?
Well, and I think again, for viewers, that too often in this space is probably looked at what I have to do or the risk of not doing, where realistically what we're learning from here in this conversation is a lot of opportunity and what the upside is as well.
Absolutely.
I'll try and wrap up a couple of these points. I think there's some crackers there. I like the, and I think it shines through, especially when you're a married couple going to business. Play to your strengths, stay to your lanes. Robust discussions, yeah. But I think playing to strengths is a key one. You don't have to have everyone doing everything, because we're a business. We're not individuals trying to, run our own race. So really important one, and actually owning when you're not good at something or not as good at something that, hey, I don't need to do that part. So I need to make sure I get started. I like what you said about, a little tip for going into business, or even, de-risking an element of it is getting that exposure and experience in the various areas. That could be for anyone from school leavers to experienced people. So really good on that. Dan, what you alluded to, team and culture, such an important part of trying to have a business that you've got that trust, you've got that people striving towards what they want to achieve. I think from the ESG specific, some of the things we just went through that probably wasn't thinking of, investment ready. We work a lot with clients on sale readiness and that sort of thing, or bringing in capital to their business. Having an ESG strategy, make sure you're investment ready. So it's not necessarily related to size. The other one I thought was really important was around your people, or your potential people, sustaining and also attracting or retaining and attracting people based on, especially as generations change, a lot more focus on stuff around ESG. So really good point. What are you doing about it? Your alignment to your customers. Now, a lot of your customers will need to adhere to certain things around ESG. Are you aligned to that, and make it easier for them to select you? Really good point. There's direct financial benefit. You mentioned low-hanging fruit from the light glows, but then obviously a hell of a lot more when it comes to strategy. So I love what you said. I say often around, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So we need to be looking at that from a direct financial aspect as well. If you're after capital, some really good benefits with mainstream lenders and alternate lenders around debt if you've got an ESG strategy. So something to be looking at, especially if you've got growth plans or you're looking to scale. Cash is king. We're going on to more business now. We've heard that so many times. Yeah. So, that's an absolute one. And challenging that as well. I think especially you'd find if you're working with large corporates, they usually dictate the terms. But, when they need something, you can often kick back and get things going your way. So that comes with, I guess, experience as well. Importance of delegation. Yeah, an ongoing process. But in running a business, guys, if you want to actually have a business that's, the killer for most businesses on valuation and exit is key person risk. If you can't delegate, you'll be trapped. It's often those people that say they got in a business for a better lifestyle and more money, and you go, how's that going for you? And I think also from that ESG perspective, there are new standards that's been implemented in Australia. You need to get your head around how it might affect you. So, we could probably talk about this all day. It's such a big topic, but there's some really key points that businesses of all shapes and sizes need to probably have some thought around. So, people want to reach out. It's sesg.co, not com, co. Yep. Yeah, get on, check it out.
Yep.
And look, guys, thanks for joining me. It's educated me a bit. I'm sure we'll continue that conversation, but appreciate you joining us on Down to Business.
Thanks for having us, mate. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Till next time, guys, check out your ESG. Cheers.